Well, today we're going to be picking up right where we left off on the Supra build. In the last video, which was the first video of this build that was supposed to go well, it ended up being an absolute disaster. So we had a sneaking suspicion that something was going on with this engine just because of the way that it was running. So we went and did a compression test and found that compression was relatively low across the board, about 150 across the board, which is not terrible. But then cylinder 1 had 130 psi and cylinder 4 had 140 psi. Still not the end of the world, we can work with that, but we had to move forward. The compression test doesn't tell us everything. And we did a leak down test, and on the leak down test we determined that either the cylinder head is warped or cracked, the block is warped or cracked, or just the head gasket is bad, potentially a combination of all three, because we found that all of our compression was leaking into our cooling system. So at a bare minimum, we have to pull the head off. So I guess let's start tearing this thing apart and figuring out what we plan to do next. This will be fun. This is the first time we've had the Supra up in the air. I was able to fix the pinch welds enough to lift it. We talked about that in the first video, how smashed those things were. Let's take a look at the condition of the underside of this car. I just noticed right now this thing has an HKS high power muffler, although I don't think that the exhaust is all HKS high power. And we're also using this silicone coupler here, I think, to prevent vibrations against the subframe there. You can see how close that is. We have a Torsen LSD. Let's see what else we're looking at here. The frame rails don't look terrible on either side. Actually, they look pretty decent. A little bit crushed in right here. But besides that, the frame rails do look pretty decent. Taking a look at some other things, subframe bushing, seeing if anything's been replaced. Because I think I did notice, at least on the front of the car, that we had some of these bushings replaced right there. You can see that. We have the Tang coilovers as well. Looks like we have a Turbo Smart wastegate up in there. If you look over here, you can kind of see inside of the bell housing, we have that spec twin disc clutch in there. Kine or Kane motor mounts. Not really sure how to say that. Looks like we have some stainless clutch lines, solid transmission mount. And overall, it doesn't look that bad. We definitely have some oil leaks going on, as we can see down here on the cardboard. But I mean, overall, in pretty good condition. I did notice this right here. I have a little bit of rust on this front cross member. If there was anywhere that rust would be the front cross member, or not the cross member, I'm sorry, the front bumper bar is where I would prefer it to be, so that's fine. Nothing on this side. Got our intercooler. Let's see, what else we got here? Oh, nice. Gatorade bottle overflow tank. We're gonna have to fix that. What is this? What is this? Oh, that's the actual line going to the overflow tank. Okay, so we're gonna start off by draining the oil and the coolant, seeing how that looks. I'm expecting it to have coolant and oil mixture in both. And then from that, we will start tearing off the turbo manifold and the intake, getting ready to pull this head off. It's crazy how much more room you get under the Land Cruiser as compared to under the Supra, because even though this lift can lift up a car 6 feet, it the actual underside of the Supra is a lot lower than the Land Cruiser, since the Land Cruiser is on a frame. Man. All right, let's silence the gong and drain this oil, see what we look like. I gotta be honest, it's not as bad as I thought it would be. It doesn't even look milky, so I don't know, I guess we might be at the very start of the head gasket failure, but we definitely, as you guys saw in that first video, we're leaking compression into that cooling system. So, that's interesting. We're definitely due for an oil change, but not what I would have expected to see. The coolant looks surprisingly clean too for having a blown head gasket. I suppose we could have caught it right at the very beginning. If you guys take a look at this 1J, I can explain why I'm surprised why everything looks clean. So we have our cylinders here and we have our block surface. The head gasket goes on top of this and it seals between the block and the head. So the only thing that we'd be putting pressure into doing the leak down test is the cylinder itself. And the actual pistons at top dead center, like this one is here on a compression test. So if anything's leaking past here or here or here or there, that's when we would see it actually entering a water jacket and finding its way and pressurizing the coolant system. So somehow on cylinder 6, we are seeping past the top of the cylinder here through the head gasket in some way or another and getting into a water jacket that allows us to get into that cooling system where we shouldn't be seeing it. So I suppose it's possible we caught it early and that's why the oil and the coolant looks clean. But if I'm thinking back, when I took the oil cap off when I was first starting the leak down test, there was a milky residue in it. So I don't know, interesting case here.
There we go. See that milky residue right there? That is classic bad head gasket. Some of it came out of the port on the bottom of the radiator here as well. Bunch came out when I first pulled off this hose, but I wasn't recording. So there we go. There's our evidence. I think we have to stick to the facts of what we found when we did the leak down test on this. When we put 100 PSI on the leak down test in the cylinder 6, it caused the coolant in the coolant system to churn. And that can't happen unless we're leaking past the seal between the block and the head. So all of this does have to be taken apart. I think I'm just trying to create doubt in my head to not have to go so far into it. So what I'm gonna do is kind of a systematic approach here. I'm gonna start from the top and just kind of work my way down per se. So the first thing I think I'm gonna do, I wanna prove if this thing actually has the HKS cams it is supposed to have. So I'm gonna pop off these valve covers and I'm gonna check that. And that'll also show me if it has ARP studs. And maybe we'll get really lucky and these head studs, they've just kind of worked themselves loose or they weren't torqued correctly or something, and we can just tighten them and fix this issue. I really doubt it, but I guess we'll just start there. All right, well, it's the moment of truth. We had the valve cover loose. We're about to pop this thing off and figure out if it really does have HKS cams and ARP head studs, or if it just has stock head bolts and stock cams. So let's pop this thing off and see. I want to say we do have HKS cams. I don't see any branding on here yet. I'm going to turn the engine over to make sure, but I really wouldn't imagine that cams from the 90s would look this clean. You see the cam caps there, and actually you can see a little bit of our milky residue from the head gasket right there. Look at that. So you can see the cam caps right there, and that's the color of the cam lobes and the cam, well, not the lobes, but the cam might be if it were from the 90s. And yeah, I just don't see any branding on them, but they do look like aftermarket cams. I'll have to turn it over and see if there's any HKS logo or whatnot on it. And also, let's check those head studs. Oh, I think they do. I think it does have ARP studs. It's gonna be hard to show you on camera. I don't know if you can see that or not. But that is a stud and not a bolt. So I believe we do have ARP head studs, and I think we do have aftermarket cams. I'm gonna turn the engine over, see if I can find any branding just to verify. Oh shit, it says HKS on it. Nice. I don't know if you guys can see that, but if you look right there, that says HKS. We do have the HKS cams in here. Awesome. I've talked about it in like previous videos of the car that I was a little bit worried it wasn't gonna have the parts, because there were certain things that like I was kind of misled on, like the turbo. I was told it was a Garrett and it's actually a Rev 9 turbo. So I was kind of torn popping off that valve cover. I was thinking, is it gonna have the cams? Is it gonna have the head studs, or am I gonna be kind of screwed here and just have a stock head? And luckily it does have those parts. So I was telling myself, if this 1J head is built, I'm not gonna swap out to a 2J head, because I was considering, and I had a comment about it, why don't I just put my 2JZ head on here? And I was really thinking about it. But now knowing that I already have my turbo manifold that's for the 1J head, and I have the cams, these are like $800 cams. I have the cams in there and everything else. I'm just gonna stick with the 1J head. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna pop the cams out. We're gonna check the tightness of those head studs and see if maybe I can get lucky and just tighten those down. Maybe something is loose, maybe something just came out of spec, and we can redo that leak down test and see if we still have the same issue. And if we don't, that'd be really cool, but I think we're still going to, but I have to try anyway just to see what happens. I've started to take some things apart. As you can see here, I do have all of the intercooler piping off for both the hot side and the cold side. I have the radiator hose taken off and a couple of other things. You can probably notice the catch can's gone amongst some other parts as well. So what I'm gonna do now is pull off the turbo setup, since we have to anyway, because I'm gonna be upgrading all of that. And if I do pull the head off, that has to come off, of course. Starting to find some more little things. I don't know who does this, but this was taped up with tested tape. Took it all off and found that, yeah, we just have the leads of that connector from the wideband shoved directly into the factory harness. That's hilarious. So we're gonna pop that off. We might take out the radiator as well, just because I do plan to replace that, but it'll also give me more room to get back there, or in between the radiator and the timing components, just so I have some more space. And yeah, then we'll pop the cams out. Maybe we'll get lucky with the head studs. Doubt it, but I guess we'll see. So let's get to it. Oh, that was really loose. This is just some friendly advice when you're working on rusted or stuck parts like exhaust manifold bolts. Do not use 12-point sockets, use 6-point sockets, and you will have a much better time not rounding off the bolts. The camera can fool you, but man, I've been working on getting this turbo out of here for probably the last 45 minutes. And I finally got it out. If you've ever pulled a turbo off, or a turbo manifold or anything, you know how hard a lot of those bolts are to get to. And here it is. Here is the old turbo. Now I gotta figure out how to get the rest of these manifold bolts off on the bottom. The last bolt right here, cannot get it off. Don't have time to mess with this all day, so I'm just gonna weld another nut to it, which will get it hot enough to remove it, and then we'll take it out at the same time. Ah, finally. Woo! Got it. That was, oh my gosh. There it is. After fighting for this thing for about 2 hours, we got it out. Let's check and see if this thing is actually a Trust or a Greddy. Doubt it. So if you watched the first two videos on the Supra build, I was immediately suspicious that this was not a Trust or Greddy manifold like I was told when I bought the car, because there's no branding. You would expect to see something like that. And by the way, this is the old and this is the new. Look at that. What an improvement over these manifolds. But I'm looking around this thing. I don't see anywhere on it where it says trust or Greddy or anything. So I guess I could try to clean up the flange and see if it's somewhere on that flange. But I would just expect a huge brand like Greddy to put some sort of marking on a manifold. Even if it's an old 1J manifold, I would expect to see something. Now, I was told that it had a Turbo Smart Hypergate 45, and it does, so that's awesome. We'll clean this thing up as well. As you can see, this is all dirty. So let's clean up all these parts, check it again, and try to verify if this is indeed a Greddy manifold. Well, I was able to clean it up a little bit. I took the wire brush to the flange to knock off some of this paint that's on here to see if maybe I would see any like engravings on top, which I would definitely see at this point, and I don't. So I don't know if there's any way to verify it. Some other things that I noticed was on the actual flange, they drilled out the holes so that it would take a nut and a bolt instead of threading like how this one is, for whatever reason. So this thing's kind of junk at this point. Another thing that I noticed was that whatever the wastegate flange was on here before, it was not V-band like that. You can see that's welded on after the fact to fit this Turbo Smart wastegate. So I don't know if it's a Greddy / Trust manifold. I really have no idea. Can't confirm. Doesn't matter anyway. If you look over here, we have the R-Tech on the 1JZ, and this thing looks so much better. Just so much better. Actually, let's take this thing off and compare the two. Watch me drop it. All right, so let's just compare some things on these manifolds. Let's take a look at the inside of the ports here for the actual flange. See how smooth everything is? Everything is very smooth because it's cast. And if you look inside of this one, I mean, it's a flange that's welded onto the rest of the manifold. So you have like a hard edge in there. It's not as smooth. It's not as free flowing. It's the same thing inside of the runners. You can see the actual areas where that flange was welded to the tubes for this exhaust. And see right there, we're actually blocking exhaust as it goes into the manifold right there on that lip. So each one of these is going to be a little bit different than the other one because it's welded together, which is fine. But when you have a cast manifold like this, look how perfect everything is in the R-Tech. There's just no imperfections. It's all absolutely perfect. Another big thing, and I guess, I mean, depending on who you talk to, this matters or it doesn't, the wastegate placement between the two manifolds. Take a look at this one. Exhaust gases come out. You got a pretty straight shot here. It's decent, but you see it has to actually travel out up here and then flow out for the wastegate. Whereas with the R-Tech, it's just straight out. So this is just a way better manifold. Will it sound as good as a tubular manifold? I don't know. I mean, it technically is tubular, but it's also cast. So we'll have to see once it's on there. But I think overall, this is such a better manifold, and I can't wait to get it on. I'm also gonna have to replace all of this exhaust hardware. As you can see, we just had random bolts and nuts holding the turbo on. All of the manifold nuts are different. They're supposed to be like this one here, I'm pretty sure, that has this built-in washer, but we had all these random ones, all these bolts that like technically aren't exhaust manifold bolts, which is fine, but just the point. Here's another turbo bolt that was on there, and here's the one that we had to weld together. I had to then grind it down because it was not fitting under the tube for the manifold, but this was the last bolt. Anyway, now we can, I guess, pop this radiator out and pop the cams out. I had to give it a quick mock-up. I just had to do it. I had to see what it would look like. Look how beautiful that looks. That turbo looks amazing with that manifold. Artec manifold, Pulsar turbo, everything looking really good. The fitment of this actual compressor housing, or the turbo itself, but the housing will clock it, and everything is fitting much better because now we're not crammed into the strut tower because the Artec manifold places the turbo in a way better spot. So this is going to be way easier for all the exhaust routing, intercooler piping, all that stuff. But look how good that looks. Man, this cam might be no good. Really hope the intake isn't as bad as the exhaust here. Man. The cams are out, and unfortunately we have potentially another issue. Let me see if I can show you guys here. If you look really closely at these cam journals, can you see that scarring on camera right there? It's that way in every single one on the exhaust and the intake. Now, it's even worse on the camshafts themselves. So over here, you can see on all the journals of the cam on the exhaust, I can actually, I don't know if you can hear that. So that's basically a strong indicator that things are messed up, is when you can get your fingernail into a groove. If you can see it, no big deal. If you can feel it, that's when you got some problems. So that one is one of the worst. You can see that there, not looking good. And it's the same way on the intake. And if we actually take a look at the cam caps over here, which, by the way, these things need to be ordered when you pull them out. If you've never done this before, get yourself a piece of cardboard, clearly mark exhaust, intake, put them in order. On Toyotas, these are all ordered, like E2, E3, E4, E5, which is nice, but it's not that way on everything. So if you look under these, it's kind of the same issue. Those aren't quite as bad. Now, I'm pretty sure a machine shop can tighten those cam caps down and basically run a bore through the cylinder head to get that all nice and perfect again. That's why we have those half moons on the back, is because when this was machined at the factory, they had to run a bore through this to create those in the first place. But there's going to be a max amount that they're going to want to remove. And if we can't be within that threshold, then we might have to replace the cylinder head. I don't think we'll be at that point though. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to tighten down those head studs and see if that does fix the head gasket issue. But honestly, at this point, I'm tempted to just pull it all out anyway, like the whole engine. Because if this was built recently, as I was told, you would have noticed all of that when you were building it. And if you decided to put it together anyway, I don't know. That's a lack of craftsmanship from my perspective. All right, first one. That's loose. Let's go to what would come next. Check that one out. If I can find it. Okay. That one's loose too. So both of those are giving. I'm gonna loosen all of them and retighten factory sequence. Well, I've had some time to think about it, and I have decided we will be pulling the motor out of the Supra instead of trying to just take the easy route and do the head gasket. I'm gonna check all these lifting pucks real quick. Basically, I just started to find more and more things wrong with the car. The wiring harness all over the place, has a bunch of broken clips, oil leaks everywhere, hole in the timing cover, power steering leaks, weird mix matched bolts for the engine mounts, all sorts of things going on. So we're gonna pop the drive shaft off right now, start loosening up the transmission, and pull this engine. You guys are just gonna have to believe me when I tell you this engine is not really worth keeping in the car in its current condition. We're definitely gonna wanna pull this thing out and fix a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, not only the engine, but as I was mentioning, just there's so much to fix everywhere. It would be easier if we just pulled the engine out. And that's exactly what we're gonna do here to make our lives easier. Make sure that I don't spill all this gear oil on the ground. Oh, look at that, fresh, because they just put the engine in. We're already taking it back out. Oh man, it's painful, isn't it? That is painful. But I mean, I don't know if you guys can see these bolts under the transmission mount. We're just covered in gear oil. We're leaking from every possible area that can leak, it's leaking. If it has fluid, it's leaking. That's the story with this car. All right, let's get this drive shaft out of here and the transmission mount, the clutch line, and that should be it. Oh, and the shifter as well, and that should be it. Would you believe me if I told you every single one of these drive shaft bolts so far is loose? I guess you could see it one way. The engine was just out of the car from the PO, but these do tighten down to like, I don't remember, I want to say 50 foot-pounds or so, and these are not at 50 foot-pounds. They're probably at 15, if that. Ah, drop the light. We have a bleeder line in the actual clutch line here. There has to be a better way to route these than just through this hole. If you guys know of anything for a twin disc clutch, a better way to route those lines, let me know. I didn't do that, and I will fix that, but curious if you guys know of any solutions that are currently available that'll make that very easy. Once we disconnect this, we're basically good. There's a couple of grounds on the transmission. We still got to take the shifter out, but besides that, this will be ready to pull at this point. Just crack that free, and we will start separating that line. One step closer to getting the engine out. If anyone knows what the hell this thing is, let me know. It's coming out of the driver's side floorboard. It has a hose on it like a hydraulic line, but it doesn't have anything on the end. Is it like a temperature probe or something? What is this thing? If you're a Mark III Supra guy, let me know what this is. I have absolutely no idea.
You got to be super careful when you take these old Supras apart because like they don't really exist anymore. And if you crack any of these interior pieces, you're looking at like several $100s to get a replacement piece. So when I take this shifter bezel off, I just need to be really careful to not break any of those clips. Luckily, the screws that were behind the ashtray weren't attached, of course. So this is coming out, but not that easily. All right, look at this. This is the kind of stuff I'm talking about and why I want to pull this whole engine out. This is not a big deal. Just get yourself into the mindset of doing this. So we have a bolt there and a bolt here holding down this shift boot and trim. And up here, we got absolutely nothing. Everything's all bound up. And it's probably why this thing is so damn hard to shift. Nice ground here, awesome. We have wiring connectors taped up. This is all normal stuff that you have to deal with on project cars. Self-tappers holding in that shifter bezel from the inside of the bezel itself, so you wouldn't be able to get to that if it had an actual boot that didn't just pull out of the bezel like ours did. So the boot, I think, normally should probably be fastened permanently under there, and ours just pulls right out, of course. So let's pop this thing out of there. Self-tapper through the shift boot, through the trim, into the body of the car. Nice, that's what we want to see. Oh man. This is probably another thing right here contributing to poor shifting. A lot of times on these Toyota transmissions, you can swap out the shifter seat with like a Marlin Crawler, more solid unit. And this looks to just be rubber, flimsy rubber, which I'm not sure is doing anything. And then on the shifter itself, there's not even a shifter socket. Don't think that's normal. I've never seen that on any manual Toyota, to not have the plastic socket that goes around that ball. Supra doesn't have it at all. Here's an example of what I'm talking about. Here's the seat from Marlin Crawler, and here is that shifter socket. This is what every other 5-speed Toyota I've ever worked on has. I don't know if the Supra just doesn't have it, but I would imagine that it should. So let me know in the comments if this is expected or not, but we do have replacements if we need to install them.
The engine is ready to be pulled out. We got the harness removed. We got the shifter out. The transmission is on a jack under the car. We'll adjust that as we pull it. We'll adjust the angle of the transmission. We have the load leveler on the engine hoist. We just barely have the car jacked up to simulate as if it were on jack stand, so we could pull the engine and trans out at that like 30-degree angle to just snake it right out of there. I don't think I've ever got everything when I've done an engine pull, so let's go ahead and see what I missed. I'm sure there's something still attached to that engine. You gotta be careful of connectors. Like, even if connectors are not plugged in, there's a chance that they get hung up on something just by the corner of the connector, can get stuck under an intake manifold or a valve cover. There's all sorts of places that things can get stuck, but right now we're looking pretty good. Well, I left 2 things attached. Both the AC lines. Look how taut that thing is. It's all getting stretched. And this one right here goes down to the chassis down here. So once I unbolt these, this should start moving a little bit easier. The top 2 mounts of the transmission didn't even have bolts in them. These were not even reinstalled whenever they put the motor back in the car. When I'm telling you guys this thing had to come out, like, this is just, that's a very small part of the shoddiness going on with this build. But if that's any indicator of the mindset behind building this engine and how quickly it went into the car, then you know this had to come out. This was necessary to get to this point. Well, it's a couple days later. We're back in the shop. Pulled that engine out of the Supra at like 2 a.m. I think is when we finally finished and got it out and onto the stand. So what are the plans moving forward? We're gonna have to clean everything. I do not jive well with dirty engine bays and dirty engines and dirty parts. As you guys know, if you watch this channel, I kind of go OCD, get everything nice and clean. So obviously, we're gonna clean everything up in the engine bay. You can tell when they put the engine into this car, they just tossed it in here and did not clean anything up. I'm kind of undecided if I wanna get this all painted. You know, this car specifically, I know this, like the Mark III Supra is not desirable for many, but it's desirable for me, and the fact that it's a JZA70, it makes me wanna go the extra mile on it. So I might paint the engine bay the same 6M1 dark mica green to just get everything to look really nice. And then we're not gonna tuck any fuse boxes or anything like that, but I would like to get it nice and clean. So for the engine itself, as you guys know, this is a 1.5 JZ. So what does that mean if you don't know? That is a 2 JZ block, as you can see there, and it is a 1 JZ head. I'm a little bit undecided on what I want to do. Do I keep the 1.5 JZ, or do I take the existing 1 JZ, which is the numbers matching block for the Supra, and just get a 1 JZ back in it? The main difference, of course, is you have a 3-liter bottom end compared to a 2.5-liter bottom end. Now, the 1 JZ and the 2 JZ, they have the same bore. The way that the 2 JZ gets its extra displacement is from the stroke. That's why the 1 JZ, in my opinion, and in many people's opinion, sounds better. They rev faster, they're over square, they have a little bit of a rumble and like a higher pitched sound to them, where a 2 JZ is really smooth because it's a square engine. But you get that added torque, and it's quite a bit. It's like 100 foot-pounds at 4,000 RPMs or so from all the dyno graphs that I'm looking at. So let me know what you guys would do. Keep the 1.5 JZ or go back to what should be in it, the 1 JZ. I mean, they're technically the same thing, but let me know. I'm really undecided. I don't know what to do with these motors or what I want to build for the car. As always, give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and let me know in the comments below, 1 JZ or 1.5 JZ, what should we do? And don't say 2 JZ, we're not doing it. We're sticking with a 1J in some way, so let me know later.